Welcome to the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones, and I'm so excited that you're here. The Plan B CRNA podcast is the only show made specifically for nurse anesthetists who are exploring options outside of their traditional career paths. This is the place to expand your mind and your goals as we uncover new ways to produce side income together. The mindset that we bring to any situation plays a key part in overcoming challenges and really enjoying our unique paths in life. On Thoughtful Thursdays, I like to explore emotional topics that are relevant to CRNAs and other providers. I think of this as my therapy, and I hope you learn some tips and tricks that you can use along your own journey. This episode is brought to you by On-Call Capital. On-Call Capital is dedicated to educating CRNAs and other healthcare providers about investing outside of the traditional stock market. On-Call Capital also provides opportunities for you, yes, you, to create passive income and generational wealth while also lowering your taxable income through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. If you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure you do that right now so that you don't miss an episode. Thanks so much for joining me today, and now on with the show. Welcome to Thoughtful Thursdays here on the Plan B CRNA podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Jones. As always, I like to start these off with a quote that gets me thinking. Tom Kite once said, "You can always find a distraction if you're looking for one." And it's so true. Distractions are all around us, whether or not we choose to pay attention to them. But this is increasingly difficult to navigate in our information-heavy society. We carry around ready-made distractions in our pockets. I actually got a buzz on my phone as I was typing this sentence up. There's simply more to keep up with and keep track of in our daily lives than there was 40 to 50 years ago. And with increased access to the world around us, we are bombarded with new ideas and trends. The result of this overload is usually distraction and a lack of focus and attention. To be clear, distractions can help us in a few ways. They can be a powerful tool that helps us deal with painful or negative experiences. Think of the power of books, movies, or video games that help take us away to distant lands and focus on things besides our own situations. Distractions can also help us with our own urges or impulses. Certain games like Tetris have been shown to reduce cravings for fatty foods or even addictive drugs. Research also suggests that taking our minds off of the pain of physical exercise with music or television can improve performance and endurance. However, these types of distractions are not really what I'm here to talk about today. Nearly everyone seeks out distractions, but they can take away your focus and pull you away from more important accomplishments. We end up endlessly chasing new projects instead of paying attention to the goals we've set for ourselves. This is lovingly called shiny object syndrome. And it's identified as a pop cultural psychological concept where people focus on a shiny new object, in other words, whatever is trendy, current, or the latest concept, regardless of how valuable or helpful it may ultimately be to them. We use this term to describe when someone fixates on a small thing to the extent that they lose focus on the bigger picture. And if you're an entrepreneur, you may be particularly susceptible because of the qualities that actually make you unique. You crave new technology and new developments. You're not afraid to start new projects, change paths, or create new things. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, particularly when you're looking to stay ahead of the curve. I mean, this entire podcast is sort of my shrine to, the manifestation of my own shiny object syndrome. But the acronym for it is S.O.S, and with good reason. Sometimes we need to be thrown a life buoy to keep us from drowning when we're searching for shiny things in the wide ocean of opportunity. People who have a fear of missing out, or FOMO, are especially susceptible to these types of distractions that can cloud their judgment. Just look at the meme stock rush in the markets, last spring for a recent example. Most people use shiny objects as a distraction from our responsibilities and duties. I happened to buy a lot more scratch-off lottery tickets when I was in anesthesia school than I ever have since. And maybe you find yourself unable to finish projects on a regular basis. Perhaps you can come up with a new idea but can't figure out how to follow through for the long term. Are you burning through cash, purchasing new educational platforms, tech tools, or gadgets that are fun at first, but ultimately a waste of funds? Do you change direction too frequently for others to keep up? No, S.O.S isn't really a diagnosable affliction. It's really just a problem with how you prioritize and cultivate the things that matter in your own life. As they say, you should starve your distractions and feed your focus. That's easy for folks who have really found their purpose. And you can see the last Thoughtful Thursday for my thoughts on purpose. but a little more challenging if you're still searching for that purpose. However, it's possible to find a balance so that you can stop letting those distractions hijack your productivity. And how do you do that exactly? Well, I have found some tips. So here they are in no particular order. Number one, sit on ideas before launching them. You may have found a project that's going to change everything for your financial future, but first you need to research the idea thoroughly before just diving right in. You may find that a particular idea shouldn't actually be acted upon once you learn more about it. Number two, focus on the 1 out of 50 or the 1/50, however you want to say it. Simply put, choose one day a week to spend 3 or 4 hours out of your day to focus on the 1% that produces 50% of your results. Okay, so perhaps this is more like the 3-40 or the 2-30 or some other measure, but you get the gist of it. Set aside time to work on your A-level tasks that really matter. Number three, find an accountability partner. Now, this may be a business coach, a mentor in your field, or a mastermind group. But let's face it, we don't like to let other people down. Finding external support and accountability can help you create better deadlines and give you a reason to stay on task and avoid distractions. I started this podcast when I did because I had a friend in the space who was pushing me. Number four, communicate with your team. Whether this is your spouse or your business partners, you need to hear their perspectives before moving forward. They can also help you to realize when you're moving too fast. My wife regularly puts the brakes on ideas that I have. And as a team, we both need to be on the same page, which means I have to prepare her in advance for shifts in our plan. Number five, set short and long-term goals with each new project. This ensures that you're taking the proper time to focus on areas that will need varying degrees of attention down the line. Having short-term goals helps to shorten the gaps between the larger objectives you want to achieve over time. Number six, take it one step at a time. You are more vulnerable to S.O.S. when faced with a challenge that is difficult or time-consuming. Think back to my fascination with scratch-offs. I studied which ones had the best odds, which ones had the most prizes left, etc. I didn't end up spending much money on it because I knew deep down it was pretty futile to begin with. But I simultaneously pushed off my studying at times and turned my focus to something that provided more of a spark of excitement. Yeah, it ended up being a pretty poor outlet for my anxiety overall, but I wasn't always good about breaking things down into more manageable task lists. When my kids get overwhelmed, I ask them, how do you eat an elephant? And they all know the answer by now, one bite at a time. If you can create a to-do list and check items off, you will end up feeling that excitement of accomplishment. Number seven, abandon projects only when necessary. Once your long-term goals are in place, don't just abandon a project on a whim. If the landscape shifts dramatically, of course you may need to change some tactics. But if you've properly thought through your goals, you should be able to maintain focus on the larger objectives at play. That's going to do it for me today. Per usual, I have some articles in the show notes if you'd like to learn more information. If you found value today, make sure you hit subscribe so that you don't miss an episode. I also want to hear from you. If you have a question, comment, or topic that you'd like to get covered in an upcoming podcast, make sure you rate and review on your podcast player. I check those all the time, and I try to cover those questions in future episodes. I hope you'll join us next time. This is Bobby Jones signing off. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Plan B CRNA podcast. If you haven't already subscribed and reviewed the show, I'd be honored if you took the extra time. It really helps to expand our reach and get the word out about the show. If you're a CRNA who is interested in sharing your story on our podcast, I'd love to have you. Please email me at bobby@oncallinvestments.com for more information. This episode was brought to you by On Call Capital. They are dedicated to helping providers like you develop passive income and generational wealth through investments in the apartment and alternative investment spaces. Feel free to check out their website at www.oncallinvestments.com and subscribe to their free educational email series. You can find On Call Capital on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. You can also check out our YouTube page, where you'll find all of the show episodes along with other educational videos. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you on the next episode.